the Game Designers Chat with host Greg Horton. I'm the graphic designer for Blaster, and we are very excited to get together, introduce ourselves, and share our perspective on how much room there is for indie gaming. Hopefully at the end we'll be able to tackle some questions from you guys, so make sure to leave them in the chat. And first up, I want to introduce everybody so that in case you don't know someone in the chat, you can meet them. Sean, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Sutter. I'm the creator of Relic Blade and the sole proprietor of Metal King Studio.
And Ash?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Ash. I'm the sole proprietor of Guerrilla Miniature Games, which is a web series about tabletop games. And I'm going to be working on a couple of new games, but I previously published Last Day Zombie Apocalypse, a survival horror game, through Osprey Games. And then I'm working on a mech combat game called Gamma Wolves that comes out this fall.
Very cool. Joey?
Hi, I'm Joey McGuire. I'm the publisher of This Is Not a Test. I've also written Reality's Edge for Osprey War Games. And I'm the president and head janitor of Road's End Publishing.
That's cool. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Mike. I done wrote Gaslands for Osprey. Now Gaslands refueled with all the extra pages. I've also got a spaceship game called A Billion Suns coming out next year, also through Osprey. And I'm currently playtesting Perilous Tales, which should be reaching some kind of physical incarnation later in the year.
Very cool. And then Joseph McCullough, the king.
So I'm a part-time employee of Osprey Publishing, through which I wrote the recently released Oathmark Mass Battle miniature game. As an independent creator, though, I created Frostgrave, the spin-off Ghost Archipelago, and Rangers of Shadow Deep.
So just a few small name items on there. And Sean, I don't know, did you mention your Kickstarter at all?
No, I have Kickstarter for my Toy Soldiers up now on Kickstarter. You can find it by searching Relic Blade.
Yeah, I want to make sure we get that in there. All right, and like on that topic, the question we're really asking is, how do you think independent games fit in to the gaming industry? And like another way to think about that, if that sounds weird, is like there's car games and there's sci-fi games and there's post-apocalyptic games and there's fantasy games. How do we, like, what's the point of producing one when there's so many great games out there? Like why is there room for them? So we're going to have a roundtable chat, and this is unscripted as much of the intro has been. So we're all going to pile on and have a conversation about this, and definitely leave us notes in the chats.
Cool. So who's going first? Greg? Are we alphabetically? Are we doing? No, who's going first? Tell us who's supposed to talk now.
It's supposed to be natural.
You're the adult, but you're an adult. Okay, Greg's our adult. He's supposed to tell us what to do.
I'll chime in here. So I know why I write them, and then I guess I know why I enjoy consuming them, and maybe though that somewhere in between those two is the answer for me. So I love a big game with a big miniatures line and a whole internally consistent IP and everything like that. Like that's a wonderful and delightful thing. But I also like the variety of magical interactions that can happen in a tabletop game, and the question that indie games answer for me is, what if you could just do all kinds of random stuff and all kinds of different things with with the models that you've been painting and the terrain that you've got, and you're not constrained to one game experience in terms of like a set of mechanics. And so often I'm writing games as a way of saying, oh, I've got these cool toys that I played one game with. I wonder what it feels like if I do something different with them. And that's certainly why I pick up and read and play indie games, because I just was like a butterfly. I just want to have those different experiences. Like, I don't want to watch the same movie over and over again. I don't necessarily want to play the same system over and over again.
Nice. That's my commentary on that.
That good. I could go next. Like, I think for me, indie games are in a way like a separate genre, but within the same hobby. Because for me, like when you play an indie game, you're expecting something different, but also it's not a commitment to like the whole, like you're married to one system and you've got everything. You've got something in particular that you're going for and some type of like world that you want to explore or play. And there's so much room for creativity, and there's so much room for different voices as the authors or different play styles. And I think that the fact that it's not just one system that has like system or additions updating, you get to have like iterations and explore new game mechanics and figure out what works really well. And I mean, for me, tabletop gaming has always been like really free form. And because when you get together, you might have a game master. And so it's such a great opportunity to explore all kinds of things. And so I get to collect all these indie games and play them. And I think with Blaster, one opportunity I have is like to be part of the greater like genre of independent games, and like the greater exploring all the different possibilities and all these different worlds. So I think that's very cool. I like indie video games, and so it doesn't, like, that's my favorite, is these like small, exciting, dynamic games rather than the big AAA titles. So
picking up on that, actually, I think like one thing that excites me is like potentially it's less about the fact that it's independently produced and more about the scope of its what it's trying to achieve or what it needs to achieve. So it's like if you have an indie title, like somebody can just pour like all of their passion into this one idea, and it just has to be this one little diamond, rather than a big studio production which has to have all this asset and all this content because there's expectations. It's kind of like, it's like the difference between writing a short story and it's enough to have just one magical idea at the heart of it and you can explore that for a while, versus some sprawling world building multi-spanning thing where like I like the fact that you can grab an idea, love that idea, turn it around and examine it, and you don't have to solve for the universe, you don't have to have 24 factions, and it doesn't have to last for 13 years of selling miniatures for you and stuff.
I think that's a really good point, is you can do one thing really well, or you can try and do everything, and you kind of have to leave it to your fans or your audience to like fill in the gaps. And you can never have a miniature for everything. You know what I mean? You can never have a stat line for everything that people could dream up and want to put in a game. So if you really want to make that miniature game that reimagines Outpost 31 from the Thing, then you could dive right into that and make that, or you could try and make like a horror game that could be every possible monster ever put to film. And like it, I think
I've written it for you, Ash. I'm playtesting it tonight.
Is it happening right now? Sweet.
Yeah.
But for me, that's I think an important differential between independent gaming, where you're not tied to a release schedule or product line or something like that, and more sort of like studio driven gaming, where there's an agenda to try and marry a product with a rule set and try and get sales of the widget that you're doing by framing it in terms of like playing a game. And so it's about creating the best possible individual, maybe like encapsulated experience, as opposed to trying to marry like, here's a reason to go and buy X or Y product. And so you kind of get this like more bespoke experience, because you get to spend time in one little portion of your imagination, as opposed to, and we were joking about this earlier about GURPS, but like as opposed to trying to make a rule set that covers absolutely everything, which can just lead to madness, or even just something that's watered down. You know what I mean? You water down your ideas, you water down your passion for something, as opposed to having it be like a big like dialed in experience.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, being able to be so specific about like the one fun point you want to make by having a game that's focused on that one thing. I think that's powerful.
Like one of the things I really like about
marketing creative will create 6 or 7 brands before it gets to the to the here's the brand we've chosen for you kind of thing. So there's like all these great ideas that hit the cutting room floor that haven't even been seen by anyone. And sometimes, you know, I'm in the background thinking, I think that one we cut was the best one for this person, but it just isn't it doesn't fit all the specific needs that they're looking for. I feel the same way with these games. Like we all have our favorite versions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle and hated versions of 40K and all these different things where we're, you know, that's just the difference between one rule set and another rule set. And we're talking about the ability to switch gears from one rule set to a completely different one. And the variety that comes with that and the exploration means that, you know, normally it's this one monster game and we're going to build on that monster game. And then in indie, you've got indie titles. And then now with Blaster, you have sub-indie titles almost. We're taking and riffing on things that are underneath indies, you know, surface level that we feel comfortable sharing in a magazine format rather than a you know, full book that's $50.
Yeah, even it's funny because even like even when we talk about 40K and Warhammer, like you just mentioned, I think the reason that you get your most loved and most hated editions of games like that is because the spotlight gets pushed somewhere else. I think people really liked 5th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle because it was Hero Hammer and they felt like they could identify themselves in the battlefield as the generals or the big monsters or whatever. And the people that liked that about the game were the ones that wanted a dialed in character driven experience. The people that hated it were the people that wanted an army game where the soldiers mattered and moved around and did things. And so when the edition changes and that sort of like floodlight moves to a different position, that's where that emotional resonance happens with the consumer, the person playing the game, because it shoots around, because it's a game that's so big and has so many rules and so many like factions that you can only really keep the spotlight on so much of it at one given time when you write a rule book. Otherwise, the rule book would be 7,000 pages. You know what I mean? Like it would be this enormous Starfleet Battles rule book where it matters what color the chairs are on deck 37 or whatever, because that might have in some way an impact in the game when the Romulan cruiser like blasts you out above you.
There's only 4 models, but like what color you paint the chairs is really important.
Starfleet Battles is Joe can back me up on this. Starfleet Battles, I'm sure Joe played this game, has got like the most
Starfleet Battles.
No, nobody does.
That's all I play.
It's like they look like 1980s computer manuals. You know what I mean?
They're awesome. All the little boxes you get to fill in. What more could you
pull? BattleTech?
Yeah.
And now you can tell the generational gap between like half of the designers.
The pencil users.
Amazing.
Like Joe's game, Oathmark, right, is Dark Ages, and just that little spin on the fantasy is huge. Like every fantasy game has like this like mild black powder thing to it, which is great. That's sick. But it's also kind of cool to think like just bows and spears and swords, you know, like axes. How does that work? Like how does it work where these races that we've encountered so many times are approached in a different way? Yes. Also, I like the dark.
Do you consider it an indie game, Joe?
No. Well, I mean, this is actually what I was going to say. Like, before I started hanging out with you guys, I never thought in terms of indie games versus any other type of games. For me, games are just interesting or not interesting, and parts of those games may be interesting or not interesting. So, if I want to play a game that features Space Marines, I'd be just as happy to buy 40K as I would be to buy something that somebody stapled together and take the parts that I want, which is probably why I'm more of a game designer in some ways than I am a game player. You know, the game is the game going on in my head. And so I think indie is interesting to me because it is a much more organic process. You know, it isn't driven by models or by financials. It's just driven by what it is I want to do. It's obviously not driven by financials.
How does it feel? How does it feel?
Yeah, and just kind of like, what would be cool today, you know? I'm going to do underwater rules. Underwater rules are a terrible idea for a game. You'll sell 5 copies of that.
Whatever. Demons of the Deep is the best fighting fantasy book, and you know it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it for me is that I'm an independent artist, and so like I've always had my like professional practice and treat it the way a fine artist would. I've got my studio all just full of stuff, and hopefully people will be into it. And like, and so I think that's where I come at it from an independent angle. Is just like I do things on a whim. I do what I want, and like, and stuff that I like, and hopefully someone will share my taste, rather than like trying to do things the tradition or more methodical way where you work with a publisher and you have a plan. And more like fly by the seat of your pants. And then this week we have goblins on magic carpets. Like, so it's, I don't know. I'm just an overly whimsical person, but that's part of the indie that I experience, you know?
And I mean, I think I dive in here and say I preferred play experiences and kind of showing people that they can do whatever they want with their games. A lot of my games are based on the most fun that I had when I was like 18 or 19 years old, playing Necromunda in a basement, and like that's what I wanted more of. And can you still buy it? Yeah, kinda. But if I want to play it, sometimes you got to make it.
You and I talked about that actually when you and I first like got in contact with each other. I can't remember what, I think you emailed me, and it was I remember you talking about where it came from, and it really resonated for me why you decided to write your game, because it was why I wrote Last Days. It was because I had all these modern hassle-free miniatures and zombies that I didn't have a game for, right? Where I had this collection of miniatures sitting on the shelf and there was nothing to do with it, and I wanted an experience I didn't have. And I think that's where like that whimsy kind of that Sean's talking about becomes this energy that makes you right. You have this idea, you got to get it out there, and you had this collection of post-apocalyptic miniatures that you loved, you know what I mean? And all these experiences playing like Fallout and playing like all these games from like your childhood that you wanted to reimagine in front of you, you know what I mean, in a different way. And I think that's where game design independently, when you're doing it all by yourself, you're not part of a team where there's individuals making art assets, there's people doing packaging, there's people sculpting miniatures, and you're collectively putting a product together. That's product design. I think that when it's just you with an idea and this feeling you're trying to make happen when other people play, like you're literally trying to make other people have a feeling when they follow the rules that you're writing out, right? You're remotely dungeon mastering them to have a good time and try and feel a certain way. And that's a really like, if that doesn't come from that energy, that like want to create an experience inside you, I think that's where games come off and they're kind of hollow, you know what I mean? Where you see it and it's trying to be a game and it's not trying to create an experience, right? Because otherwise if it's not creating experience, why are we doing it with Toy Soldiers? It's just a board game. And I'm not saying that that's not good game design, it's not important, but like if it's just pogs in front of you, you know what I mean, getting pushed around, that's not the same as seeing the horde of zombies, you know, like descend on one individual and just tear them to pieces. And like the miniatures are actually there, and you can hear the growling and the snarling and the screaming in your head as it all goes down.
It's like we're not playing. We're most tabletop gamers that I know, we're not interested in collecting mechanics, throwing them together, and saying what's the most interesting out of them. It's how we can apply those mechanics to the experience.
Yeah, and it connects to there are a bunch of assets or elements that come together that like marry the theme and the feeling, and like for me, I'm always, because I design with sculpture, illustration, and rules all in mind. So maybe I'm coming at it from a different way than a miniature agnostic writer, but like I want to like tie all these ends together and really, give people a cool look into this imaginary world. So maybe that's totally different than what you guys do, but
it's interesting, because I don't know that it's totally different, but like it feels like something that's really core to the way that I approach this stuff is that I had a very make, do, and mend kind of a wargaming upbringing, like I guess most of us, where pre-built terrain didn't exist. Like everything that you had on your table was built out of straws and toilet rolls. And I feel like when I get the best energy back from people in the Gaslands community or in the playtesting groups for A Billion Suns. It's when people are like, oh, I remember when I could just do whatever the hell I wanted and get these cornflake boxes and stick it down and just get stuck in. And so I don't know whether it would feel particularly different to do that as like, okay, I'm trying to create a more holistic experience where the assets all come together and they tell a story and they bring a world to life.
You know, sorry to interrupt. I think what I'm saying is like I'm a visual person, and so for me to communicate what I meant in the first place, I'm probably going to have to do a drawing and a sculpture, anyways. So I'm just using my own vocabulary, and it includes other things. But yeah, I think it's very similar.
Joe, you were about to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say I take almost the exact opposite approach, and perhaps this is because I am absolutely not a visual thinker. But I like to leave things incredibly open. For me, the joy of creativity is pushing other individuals' creativity. So games like Frostgrave and Rangers leave these huge open areas. You know, people like, where's the map of Frostgrave? And I'm always like, I'm not doing a map of Frostgrave. I don't want there to be a map of Frostgrave. As soon as I make a map, there's boundaries, and I don't want it to have any boundaries because I want you to be able to see it any way you want. And you know, some people don't like that style of gaming. They want something that's more, you know, centered. But for me, that's the only way it's fun. Because since I'm allowed to do whatever I want, I kind of want to let the player also be allowed to do whatever they want.
Dude, that's so cool. That's like I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this before. It's probably pretty weird, but like there's like a Russian essentialist like literary theory, where there's like a core set of like 5 stories, and every story kind of like spins off of that. Mm-hmm. Just kind of casually dropping that. The
Nerd alert.
That's really interesting about a miniature game is that we're not playing a game, really. Like when you're having that moment with your friend across the table and you're moving miniatures around and you talk about it later, you don't talk about the mechanics, right? You don't talk about the dice rolls. You do and don't. I mean, but
they create
basically
an experience.
You're creating a story. You're creating a story as you go, and it's not 6 kinds of stories. It's just an endless, sprawling amount of moments that we're, as a human existence, like continuing to live out. Is the same thing in games, where all these different games we're having these different moments.
Yeah, I think you remember, for me personally, I remember a dice roll if it led to like a memorable occurrence. You know what I mean? If that like totally outnumbered an alone model through the dice, like just sticks the landing somehow and like and survives. That's so important, I think.
That guard kills the bloodthirster.
That is the one bit of game design I think that Workshop it didn't innovate because I think it's an RPG relic, but is really kept to is the whole ones always fail, sixes always pass thing. Always leaves the long odds play in there. There's nothing automatic as far as success and failure, and that leaves that little bit of like, that little bit of opportunity for some huge swingy, like inopportune thing to happen that you always remember. And that's
the D6 is too swingy.
That's it, the D6, the 6-sided universe. I like how the 6-sided universe is like flat earther theory. You know what I mean? It's like you only got 6 sides to your universe. Like garbage.
What? I'm like, that blows my mind, because when I was playing Frostgrave, I was like killing everyone with archers, just like D12 murdering people, and we all walked away like
D20.
Well, it is about like,
Frostgrave with a
you imagine these
only real slow game.
They're all D12s for the bad guys.
Chance of surviving.
Did I say D12?
You did, yeah.
That's
Everybody
so
knows
funny.
Frostgrave is D20.
That's right. Yeah.
20. There's 20 sides.
It's 20 sides.
It's burnt in effigy across the interweb.
Yeah, it's in all the Amazon reviews.
But to Ash's point, that's what I mean, is that there's moments that create story. And when you have the swingy dice, that's a moment for a story. That's like an epic save or an epic fail. But we don't talk about like the modifiers, right? Like the mechanics of it.
Oh, right, yeah. You're never like so stoked that you hit with a +6.
You don't worry about how you got to the result. You just care about how cool the result was when you got there.
Yeah.
So if y'all design successfully one of those systems that has moments that happen, why bother designing another one? Why not just reuse that one over again?
if
Working on
Ooh.
it.
Because I'd be bored as hell. I wouldn't ever write anything again. I can't leave stuff alone. I can't ever leave stuff. I'm never happy with anything I write. I look back at last days and go like, "No, maybe I should."
Oh man.
Instead.
Because the mechanics need to reflect the game as well. I mean, you know that, like, I mean, first off, I couldn't have like used Frostgrave mechanics for Oathmark, but even if I could have, it wouldn't have been right because the chance of something weird happening should be really high in Frostgrave, whereas it shouldn't be near as high in Oathmark.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting because I think that when we approach game design, one of the things that we don't think about sometimes, and I've seen other people writing games, I think maybe put to the wayside, even big companies, is actually what the players are doing to get the result, and like how many steps it takes to do something, and how that affects their enjoyment of the game. Not just does the rule kind of mechanically coolly reflect how something works. So like, let's take the dodge rule in your game in Relic Blade, Sean, where you get to add a d6 to your base defense, right? It's a cool rule because it's not perfect. You don't just get to add X number to your defense. You act like double your defense, something like that. It's still a swingy variable, and it still could lead you getting killed, and you've wasted it, and you feel like you wasted an action. But that tension in and of itself, and the fact that it's quick to resolve, and it creates an emotional reaction when you roll that defense die, and you hopefully add what you wanted to add to it and get the good result to the bad result. It creates a feeling it's important. Versus, you look at like the current edition of 40K, where models can have like 3 or 4 saves, but because of the way that like hitting, wounding, damaging interacts with each other, you can get to like 7 steps to like see if you just take one model off when 10 guys fire 10 guys. And and at that point, you don't care if they lived or died anymore. You just want the process to be over. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like,
yeah.
I don't care about all your additional after saves and then totaling damage and seeing what damage gets ignored and what damage goes away and then rounding up and rounding down. And like,
So if you don't have that granularity, presumably then you can't support 21 years of a game because you don't have enough hooks to hang hats on, and you eventually run out of hats. Whereas I can get away in Gaslands with a super simple combat system. You just roll a dice pool and 4s always hit and 6s, because I don't need to account. I've got a finite universe that I can say, like, after this point it stops being mechanically interesting to vary this because there aren't enough variables. But that's okay, because actually the game does this thing, and if I wanted to do a game that does something else, I'll just go start another game.
And I don't have to mix pod racing into my post-apocalyptic car combat. I'll just write a separate game with new rules that is pod racing, right?
For example, for
right.
a totally random example. I mean, for me, when I'm writing rules, I'm always trying to think about part simulation and then also gamifying and like trying to balance those things. But like, why write a different rule set for me is like really evoking the steps like Ash was talking about. Like, for me, swinging a sword to hit a goblin, it shouldn't take me more time to roll the dice than it would take to swing a sword. But if I was playing a game where I was the commander of a battleship, it should take time to train the guns and like tell guys what to do. And it's not that I want to add steps that aren't fun, but if I can make rules that evoke like yelling at a guy and then that guy shoots the gun, I don't know. I'd like to include the feeling I'm trying to evoke. So if I'm swinging a sword, it should feel like swinging a sword instead of swinging a sword while, like, you know, maths calculating the velocity of the blade versus the angle of their armor. Like, that's not what.
Unless it's a dueling game and it's super important, and that's the
right.
fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you can evoke it based on what you want, and so the rules should serve that. In my humble inexperience.
Yeah, I think you can take that a step farther to scale as well. Like, one of my problems with BattleTech was you had this really complex system and this really complex sheet for what is essentially a 28 mil miniature. You know, I think one of the things that the Games Workshop got right when they brought back Adeptus Titanicus is they got these big models that you have a full sheet for, and you don't mind keeping track of all these kind of different things.
Yeah, it feels right.
Big model, you know, whereas the little guys should just explode and get off. So.
Yeah, so I think what you guys are talking about is like what design is, right? So design is using art intentionally to communicate something. It's like you've designed this thing for a purpose. So in game design, you're taking a game mechanic and you're applying the purpose to it. So with the saves on the 40K, being devil's advocate a little bit, like you have a bunch of dope Space Marines, to your point, Joe. It's like you want to have like some, like moments where the bullets are deflecting off the armor. So that's like an intentional choice. And you carve it out for the game and the purpose that you have. So with Relic Blade, there's this cool like melee and defense role where it feels like a sword fight, and that's the purpose of it, and it's great. And the same thing for ramming somebody in Gaslands, or for sucking their brains out and upgrading your warband. And this is not a test.
And I almost feel like the simpler you make the mechanics for the bits that aren't not important, they aren't the focus, the better, because you get that stuff out of the way and then you throw the spotlight on the thing that people really care about. So exactly like in Titanicus, where the knights run around and they don't really have facings and it's fine and they blow. There's no faffing about because they're an element that makes the big guys look cooler, not the thing that you care about.
Well,
I think
it's funny because
simplifying that stuff and being like, is my game about this? And then just going, make it simpler.
I think the interesting thing about that knight example too is that the faster the knights move, the more ponderous and big they make the bigger titans look too. So actually stripping that out and simplifying it actually reinforces that design choice that these are these huge land battleships that Sean was talking about, where it takes a long time to turn them around and things can go wrong and you have to train the guns and all that stuff.
So we acknowledge that, non-independent games can be good, but
Right, yeah,
they are good.
They get it right.
I am independent, so I don't have the option to not make an independent game.
No one will hire us. Why does no one hire us?
I think there's something too, like there's a certain amount of like design roles in every AAA title, so it just narrows the view. And I think that everybody's does a good job of thinking through their design. And like sometimes you get bad games and sometimes you get just those really great games. But I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I can say something about independence, like I really try to enjoy not having a bunch of other voices saying like what I can and can't do. And I think like with a big title, you can end up having, I worked a little bit on a game that had a big IP. And it took months and months and months to hear back from the IP holders about whether it reflected their ideas. And then so it's just so many people trying to bounce the intention around that it can kind of have a sanitizing effect. Whereas like good or bad, you're getting something like straight from the source when you get an indie game. And I mean, hopefully it's a creative choice that like you like, but it's like farm fresh, like straight from the source, unfiltered.
Well, there's that. I think there's a distinction too that people don't really think of, because the word game designer gets thrown around a lot, especially in regards to big companies. But a lot of the positions in those companies aren't actually design positions; they're developer positions, and that's something the video game industry is pretty distinct on. If you're a developer or designer, because very often you don't get asked to design something when you work on a AAA title. You get asked to develop something in conjunction with a product, and that's not the same thing. To say you need to take this existing IP and develop a rule system for which it can be played on the tabletop. There will be an initial design element, but if you're reimagining a current rule system, or you're taking an existing IP or an old game and you're just redoing a new edition of a rulebook or something like that, you're actually just developing an existing product. You're not given that freedom that you're talking about, Sean, to make something yourself. I think that would be the problem that I would have working on someone else's ideas. Is I wouldn't be able to harness that energy I was talking about earlier, where I'm excited about creating an experience in the same way that I would need to be, because it's not really a design role at that point. It's a development role where you're working on something for somebody else and you're trying to improve it or make it the best product it can be. But you don't really get to do that imagination journey that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's not, working on teams myself, it's like it's just easier to turn a smaller boat around, than a bigger
Yeah.
boat. And it's not that the bigger boat's incapable. In a lot of ways, it's like amazing what they're doing, but it's just not as quick because they can't bring, they have to get everybody on board. They have to communicate these new things and start to slowly turn the ship around, including bigger audiences too. So it's like,
Yeah.
High price of failure. They
And
have much lower. Yeah.
and
We
huge
can
risk.
fail often.
We can fail cheap. Yeah.
And then I think if you guys can remember in like video games and shooters, it used to be when you died in multiplayer, you just stayed dead. I don't know if you guys
And you
remember that.
watched. You had to watch everybody else play.
Yeah, I was explaining that to my daughter recently because she got into Fortnite. But go on.
And you just sit there and it's like
You gotta
painful.
watch.
And the first time I remember, somebody to think outside the box of the life mechanic and you're dead and you're dead was Halo. You like have a shield that fully regenerates. So you're having these moments where you're shooting up a group and you hide behind a wall and you take a deep breath. And it's just like, I'm a hero, and your shield's charged back up and you pop back out and do it again, completely on purpose to change how you feel about it. Now everything is like that. Every Call of Duty, all of these different things has this constant, you respawn, you keep going. And that was not the status quo. And so I think it's really important for a bunch of weirdos to produce game rules so that we as a community get to glean like some kind of interesting idea and help expand upon it that is fun for everyone on every game,
It's
So
funny.
there's
like-
some communal stuff too and expectation and where indie games can help.
I think it's funny because it seesaws. That thing you're talking about with Halo became the industry standard, and so it was rebelled against with things like Arma and DayZ, where all of a sudden the new like de rigueur thing was like permadeath, and like you would play and you wouldn't just die, like you would have to like restart your character that you've been working on for months, like from the beginning, and that became like the cool new like it's interesting because it shifts around. Because I can remember what you're talking about. I remember the painful like watching guys finish a Counter-Strike game. You know what I mean? Where like you died like seconds at the door, somebody threw a grenade like halfway across the map and killed you without being seen. And you'd sit for like 20 minutes and like watch a game happen. But then you're right, everything became respawns and you have these hero moments and whatever. And then it went
But that
back.
becomes a
again.
design
Every
choice,
one of those big
That's the
innovations
thing.
that then gets adopted have to be new at some point.
And torn down again and has to go somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to
and I
Joe's
mean,
point, the
I don't
cost of
think-
failure is high, so you can't take as many risks on that. You can't push that space as quickly and as with as many risks.
Because what is it emphasizing now? It's not emphasizing heroism, right? It's emphasizing teamwork, which is a more realistic dynamic for a combat situation. So it's interesting.
And no one's arguing that we should stop making first-person shooters because Halo 1 came out. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, the idea of like why indie games, like iteration is good and like game design has advanced and tastes have changed, So like whether we're going to make a roguelike tabletop game or not, like that's our choice. And there's space for it, there's room for different types of gaming experiences, especially if we can make it people feel more comfortable with using their collections. When I was a kid, I like hated playing with Star Wars toys with G.I. Joes. Like, what?
Your articulation was different.
But like, I think I can try and break that a little bit and get comfortable, like having tanks roll around frost giants or whatever.
Mike has left the chat.
It's funny.
Exactly.
Mike is gone. It's funny you said that though, because I think we live in an age now where there's never been a time where the DIY design space has been more forgiving and easier to enter, because we're in a spot now where there's the ability to sculpt and print your own miniatures. Whereas before it would take you a week or months to sculpt a miniature. You know what I mean? You can do it in days now and have it printed and prototyped and in your hands in like 48 hours. So if somebody really wanted to push out a miniature fast, they just could. And that was just something that wasn't available 10 years ago. Like not even like 15, 20 years ago when the putty pushing sculpting was the only way to do it. And so plastic production's easier, printing is easier. Like we're printing Blaster on a print on demand website that just removes all of the traditional print problems. Which Sean and Joey, I know you could both attest to getting your own books printed, and just the absolute expletive deleted nightmare it is to have a garage full of books you have to pack and ship. Like,
this is why I went to Joe and Osprey. I was like, I'd like to design a game, but I just won't bother until somebody.
That was it too. It's the same with me. I was like, I want to do this work.
Kind of life energy.
Yeah. I got too much other shit going on.
The flip side is that I've been to Sean's garage and seen all the Relic Blade minis and bags all over, and I'm like, Sean, you have so much Relic Blade. He's like, yeah, I'm making it. But
Yeah,
still, to me, I was like, you've got so many armies here.
Where did you think it comes from? It doesn't sound like gnomes just ship it to you.
I mean, if you put me in a warehouse at GW, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll freak out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember we took a bunch of GW staff once to the warehouse in Memphis and toured them around the facility. We had the then warehouse manager give them a tour. A really nice guy. And one of the things he always liked doing with the staff was walking them over to one of the plastic printing machines and having them see liquid plastic go into the machine, and then like a rhino comes out. And then, like a frame of Space Marines, and then he'd give it to them, and they'd hold their hands, it would still be warm, and they would have, you could see them having this like emotional reaction to like being in Santa's workshop, and then he would make him go throw it in the shredder to make bases. And he'd be like, and this is where bases come from, and like throw it in the shredder, and they would shred it all down to like chip plastic, and like, because that's what they reuse all the off plastic for, is to make bases, because you can only make you only dye the plastic like down to black.
Yeah, that's scary.
Fun fact.
There's like a gaming convention for war gamers, like board, like paper chit,
Axis and Allies style stuff. Yeah.
The other war games.
Yeah.
Avalon Hill.
Yeah.
And GMT Games is in my home state of California, and they've got one of the pitches that they have for the games. They have a games convention where when you go, you play the games at the actual warehouse and in the warehouse. And one of the perks is you get to pick a game off of the shelf that you keep. And I was like, I have to go to this just to have that experience. Like, I have to do it. Sounds so cool to just wander the halls of majesty and to pull forth, you know.
I had War Games Foundry do that for me once. I was in Nottingham, and I went to Foundry because Warhammer Historical had just come out with the Great War book. And I wanted to make a Canadian army, a BEF Canadian army for a Great War. And so I wandered into War Games Foundry, which at the time was like two guys in like a big garage in Nottingham. And I go in and I'm like, hey, I want to get some British infantry. And they're like, okay, it's over there. And so I go and get some. And they have like Colonial Command blisters and stuff like that. And it's just basically a warehouse full of like blister racks. And I was like, do you have a Mark I tank? And they were like, no, we don't usually keep those on stack, but we'll just go in the back and cast you one if you want. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we'll just go melt up some pewter and we'll cast you one. And I was like, cool. Like, can I watch? And they were like, sure. And so like we walk into the back, and there's just these huge kilns of like pewter, and they pour it into the spin caster, and they literally cast me this full metal Mark I tank, and then carefully pack it in this like non-flammable batting and put it in the War Games Foundry black box and hand it to me. And it's like,
so cool.
It's like hot in my hands. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I felt like I was like, I don't know, like trespassing into some like weird, like, I don't know.
I had a buddy that had a spin casting machine, and I literally cast the first miniatures that I produced. You know, you had to take the ladle in and dip them and everything. That was a really different experience. And
well, you appreciate that.
Huh?
You appreciate it then all of a sudden. You can feel where it comes from.
And how old school that process is. They practically make Italian bells the same way. Thousands of years old.
There's also just that teeny element of fear as you're handling like molten metal. And you're just
my God. I overpoured down the slit. So we're sitting there with a sledgehammer pounding out this like foot-long piece of pewter that's like this
baton that you've made of pewter, the inanimate.
Oh my God. Yeah, he wasn't happy.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
Ash, do you think we have some time for some questions? You want to run through a Q&A?
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, let's see some live questions from the audience. So guys, we will talk like, let's say for like 2 more minutes about game design while you guys fill up the chat with some questions that you guys have for us, and try and name us. If you want to have somebody answer individually, throw that in there, and then we'll all pipe in after that person gets to talk. And that way we can kind of control the chaos. If you guys want to hear from somebody individually, or you've got a question for one of the designers, throw it out there, and we'll be able to like hopefully get to all the questions in the time we have left. Because I think we've been going for like half an hour now, and we should have some time.
Yeah.
And Sean's back too, which is cool. So he should be able to get some questions as well. Let's see what the chat is saying. I have it on my other screen here. I have to go look at it. Who says who to the what now? There's 180 of you watching. Somebody must have some kind of questions about Blaster. Like, what's next for Blaster? How about this? I will kick us off with a question, and I'm going to actually ask I think Joe this right now, because Joe's managed to stay quiet for most of this and avoid talking.
He like tries to do that.
I know he tries to sneak under the radar, and so I'm gonna put the
Joe, I watched you on an interview with somebody, and
did you see he was getting lower in the screen? He just like,
and you tried to avoid that conversation. I was like, "You're the only one here, man." You're like, "Yeah."
So here's my question for Joe, and this is going to be a Rangers of Shadowdeep question. So you wrote Rangers of Shadowdeep, and one of my favorite things about it is that all of the cast of characters in your Ranger and his posse feel important, because they can all earn progression points. Everybody can get a little bit better, and everybody earns skills. And the nice thing is you capped the teching of that in a really clever way by having the progression points just feed into a tree, basically, where certain stats increase, and you can't just pick and choose, like dumping all your points into a good stat. So with that being done, like with you having that in Rangers and you being really happy with your system, it looks like your D20 system, where else do you think you're going to explore that idea of like a motley crew of characters going forward? Because you've done like the Ranger, you've done the Wizard with Frostgrave, like, and the thing is that like you got Aragorn, you got Gandalf, and I know you're a huge Tolkien fan, so like you covered those two. When do we get something that's like a little different genre wise from you? Like, are you ever gonna explore somewhere else with that same system, the idea of like a rogues gallery?
I've been working on something that's really, I'll release it at some point, but it's really just for myself, which so in the latest issue of Spellcaster, I put some scenarios I wrote way back when for Frostgrave, which was called Warriors of Athena, which is using the Frostgrave world rules to play ancient Greek myth. And I really wanted to expand that, and as I've toyed around with it, one of the things I wanted to work in there was actually giving the miniatures in the game weaknesses as well. So you still have, your hero, and you get to roll randomly for which god or whatever was your father, and that gives you special powers, but it also can make you gluttonous, or it can make you greedy, and this can cause you to temporarily lose control of your character on the table. And this idea can expand to your crew. So you can have a centaur, and they always have problems with either gluttony or lust. So if there's certain things on the table, they might wander off and go try to get them.
It's a bacchanalia. Yeah, they'll charge off after whatever. Yeah, I like it. That's cool.
They're kind of pushing it. I'm always trying to push a little more towards role playing, because deep down I'm a role player who doesn't role play anymore. So I'm always toying with that. And I've never really put kind of disadvantages into a system other than kind of physical, you lost a hand kind of things. So I wanted to put in more.
Feels like an interesting system to explore a sort of sanity mechanic for a Cthulhu thing as well. Like that idea, like maybe introducing those as part of the.
That's.
I love that idea of losing control of your miniature. Like that's a thing that I'm often trying to get right. Is like the fact that these things are like entirely following your big top-down direction, except sometimes they just go do the thing that they want to do.
It's so tough, like because disadvantages and like losing control of your character can be so profoundly unfun. So like
you handle it wrong,
that's one thing where it's like, holy moly, because it's got to fit. There's got to be something fun about it. In tabletop gaming, especially when it's narrative driven, like Rangers. But like how to do it right. And so it's interesting. I think it is interesting. Like, write the rules for yourself, play it, and decide whether you just like gave yourself a bummer, like a terrible time.
This is why I wouldn't put those rules into Rangers, because in Rangers you are a hero. You're supposed to stay a hero. In Warriors of Athena, you are a hero who is at some point supposed to die. You know, your life is supposed to be glorious and short.
You have your Aristea, and then you're dead.
Yeah, basically. So it's a different game, and yeah, with the Mythos stuff, that is actually what I'm working on for Blaster 2.
Ooh.
And one of the reasons Blaster is great for this is two reasons. One, I can write rules that you can use for both Frostgrave and Rangers without worrying about how else to present that, because it would be awkward. But also because the Cthulhu mythos is such a dominant flavor. It just completely takes over whatever it is you're playing. So you can't just kind of add a little bit into Frostgrave, because once, you know, the mythos shows up, it is the story. So you got to do it kind of as a separate thing. And part of that is the potential to like lose your character or get your character really messed up. And so, you know, the players have to go into that knowing that that's what they're getting into, and that probably it's a very limited idea. You know, Frostgrave, you can play that campaign forever, and Rangers can theoretically go on forever, but Warriors of Athena or a Cthulhu campaign, at some point you're getting squashed.
Yeah, because when you're dealing with like universe destroying elder gods or even just Greek gods, the trials of the local orc war boss like don't really seem like they're that important. You know what I mean? Like the fact that you cleared out this cavern full of kobolds just kind of pales in comparison to like the dimensions splitting open and reality ending, or whatever that's gonna be. Cool. Well, let's take some questions from the chat. We got a bunch in here. Some of them are more technical questions, and what I'm gonna do is, if you have questions about the magazine or like subscriptions or bundles, or if we're gonna do like a collective and stuff, what I'll probably do is we'll collect those. We'll do a post on this live show on Facebook, so you guys can kind of get the bunch of that on there. But I think what we'll do is we'll go through, and anything that's individually addressed to a designer, guys, we'll answer right here in the chat. And then any of you guys questions about like magazine technical specifics or any of that stuff, we'll leave for that post later on. So Doug Christie asked Mike, what does this mean for time extended? You contributing to Blaster?
Right now, I think time extended is on a little hiatus. It was on a hiatus as I was finishing Refueled and then A Billion Suns, and basically my spare time at the moment is split between new games, going to be supporting the new games, and working on Gasland stuff for Blaster. I'm already doing the 1 a.m. shift on this stuff, so I just don't have enough hours to rub together to also do more free PDF stuff right now. But yeah, I mean, rest assured, everything that's been about continuing to push the game forward and explore it is going to continue to happen. It's just going to happen under the collaborative guidance of these dudes here.
Cool. We got one for Joey. My guy, are you still planning on seeing some TNT vehicle rules or nah? I think that was just asking whether or not there's going to be vehicles.
They're being play tested.
Are they? So what kind of vehicles?
Yes.
What kind of big jalopies you can get to ride around in?
So vehicle rules inserting into a Necromunda type, warband style game are challenging. And I've always told people, if you want to play auto duel, Gasland does it beautifully. So I'm not looking to do that, but I would like to bring a little bit of a Gorkamork experience. You put your guys in a car, they travel around, they got to do stuff that you need vehicles, stuff breaks. I'm kind of trying to work on some campaign elements to justify the existence of vehicles. So it's been a little bit of a design challenge, but I'm still playing with it. It's still happening. I know I've promised that for a long time, but it's kind of hard.
Never promise anything.
I know. But I do have something written. I have a couple of guys looking at it. Unfortunately, COVID is I can't play test outside anymore. I can't go anywhere to play test with people. I can only play test, right now with myself. So it's kind of really hurt kind of supplement making right now a little bit, because people can't get in groups to play games. So it's like eating 3 months of viable supplement making time, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is a if playtesting is a big part of your process, COVID-19 has definitely caused some problems. If you don't have like a remote playtesting group or a way to capture that, and you've got this amazing playtest group at Games Plus that was getting together. Didn't you get together every week? That was your thing.
It was, yeah, and that's what got killed. Yeah, it sucks.
Okay, and next we have I'm looking for with a name. Sorry. So Ash, what is this for me? Okay, so Ash, what was your thought of process in moving Last Days to the Western theme with Old West? Well, really, it was the same thought I always have, which is I have a bunch of miniatures and I don't really necessarily have a game for them, and so like. Actually, I just watched a movie and I don't have a game for that particular movie. And there's like there's a ton of Old West zombie movies if you haven't seen them, and there's other supernatural Old West movies too, like Cowboys vs. Aliens. You haven't seen a Bone Tomahawk's kind of supernatural, one of my favorite like just crazy horror movies. You've got all the like just classic. Even Pale Rider is a ghost story. You know what I mean? Like it's a ghost story about this dead sheriff that like wanders into town and gets revenge on all his enemies. And so that's usually where I get my inspiration from. I look at my miniature collection. I look at the movies and the sort of like the media that I consume and the things I like and the themes, and I go, well, what fits? And the zombie apocalypse is, or even just like the disaster movie in general, like the alien apocalypse, the robot apocalypse, like whatever. It's been played out in every different genre, and so it was just a logical way of having people get more fun out of their toy soldiers. And I actually played a game of it last night, which you guys are going to get to see tomorrow on GMG. There'd be a basically a playthrough of timelines. And it was super enjoyable because all I did was paint some kind of Old West appropriate zombies and then used my Legends of the Old West / Dracula's America collection to like play a game. And I got an extra game to play with them. And it worked really well. And so I think what you'll see going forward, I'm not going to just do a whole bunch of timelines in a row, I think, for Blaster. What I'll probably end up doing is coming back to timelines maybe like twice a year in addition to other content. Because the other thing is that it'll cross-pollinate a bunch. So there's not that big a difference between an Old West blacksmith that can make like, iron horseshoes and swords and knives and things, and a medieval blacksmith that can make spear tips and bows and arrows and stuff like that. So like that skill's already presented in Old West. And so that means when I go to doing like Last Days Age of Sword, where I do like a medieval or fantasy version, or I do a Last Days World at War, I can pull some mechanics from previous volumes and not have to present it all over and over again. And so I think the timelines articles will get a bit shorter, and they can maybe be content I do in addition to doing something else.
So to answer your question, once Canada gets the movie, it'll take 6 to 8 weeks for them to produce the game.
Yes, basically, yes. You do know that we have the radio up here now, right? Like I'm talking to you through the internet. We put an arm on your spaceship, Greg, but we haven't figured out how to
drag your type. That's what it is.
It's a real bummer to be like American exceptionalist like right now. So I'll go ahead and just do it. Just
get it out. Get it on right now. It's fine.
Go everybody else. Woo.
Yeah.
Your turn.
So the other thing I'll probably work on at the same time for Last Days, in addition to like timeline stuff, is I have a whole bunch of article ideas for a series called Evolutions, where I introduce like new menaces, and then maybe even the option of like playing as like the menace, playing as the zombies, or even just playing as a faction that might have like some limited control over the menaces that are on the table. Because when I wrote Last Days, my big core design choice for it was that the horror movie genre for zombies is actually not its own genre. It's just another type of disaster movie. So it's got more in common with things like Towering Inferno or the Poseidon Adventure, where this thing that you can't control is happening and it's wandering around the table and you're dealing with it. So groups are like broken down to their base humanity and being good people or terrible people and trying to survive while stuff is going on around them. And so Evolutions is about exploring different disasters. So things like, and I talked about this actually on Blaster already, but I'm going to do a straw poll for what evolution, at least one of the evolutions that I put into the next volume of Blaster will be. But it's about like what other kind of like apocalypses could you go through? Could it be like a werewolf apocalypse or a robot apocalypse, or alien invasion or something like that, and just reskin the game that way. And then those will be kind of, I think, timelines and evolutions are going to be kind of ongoing things I work on through Blaster, and that way I can give each of them the attention they deserve. Because if I just did like a blanket of like, here's 20 other different menaces you could include, I don't think it'd be as fun as actually like exploring different equipment that you might take or different ways that might interact with the scenarios and like giving them kind of the treatment they deserve.
Yeah, because
timelines will be the same.
Like from a design standpoint, you can add a werewolf and have your guys have to shoot a werewolf, but you can. There's so much more you could do with lycanthropy or like diseases that turn your
even
guys
just exactly even just the injuries,
or trying to just keep your guy alive. And so, like like you said, you could just brush over some things, but it's more fun to take your time because those genres are so fun.
Yep, exactly. And so I think that's where Blaster. We talked about this a little bit in the editorial for Blaster this time around, but giving ourselves permission to chase down these like ideas and give them like a proper treatment is my plan for timelines and my plan for the other stuff that I work on. Who else has a question? How many different gaming systems do each of you play? So this is from Jacob Stotner. He wants to know. He knows that I play. I'm not going to answer this because the answer is basically all of them, including all of the ones you guys write. So I'm not going to answer this question, but we'll go through the five of you and ask about like play. And I'm going to quantify this, Jacob, actually by saying not just own, because I think all of us own rule books for games we don't play and haven't played, but like
I own
how many
hundreds.
games exactly. I think as game designers we obsessively collect that information, kind of like grimoires and Frostgrave. Joe, shout out. But and we saw the ones we have doubles of, but yeah, how many games do you guys think that you've probably like actively played? So we'll start with Sean, and what are they actually?
Oh dude, I think I'm gonna have to, because like I go out of my way to play as many games as I can, but like actually like returning to and playing a bunch is like I play a bunch of Saga. That's a game I like to play. And then Frostgrave and Rangers I play. And there are games that I like want to play more of but I have to get other people in. There's Wasteman that my friend Jason makes, and that game's
That's a
so
good
cool.
game.
And the style is so cool, and like everything about it is so great, and like the figures are so chunky. They're like toys, like 90s toys, and so I think that's one that I want to get on the table more. But as far as like when I play with friends, we often throw down Saga and I'm always trying to, people want to play Relic Blade, and I love to play Relic Blade, so we play that.
Cool. Joe, what about you? What games have you actively played?
Nothing in a long time, actually. Since I moved down here to the English coast, I haven't really kind of found a gaming group or found many gaming partners, I suppose.
This is real sad because you should know that Joe and me live like 20 minutes drive away.
Oh my god!
Like I said, I can't find anybody that I want to play with.
That I want.
Oh, it's just got so tense for no reason. So
I can't find anyone that I want to play with.
Okay, I only play with D6s.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need that.
Oh, shots fired.
Partly that's because just where I am in life as well. So since I am a full-time game designer writer, I literally do that from 9 to 5. And then I got 2 little kids, so I got to make time for the kids. So I don't get out much. So I've done a little bit. I had a Lord of the Rings campaign with a local guy that went for a while. I tend to get bored with games very easily because of their fixed nature. So like with Lord of the Rings, I'm actually terrible at the game, but I've figured out why I'm terrible, and thus I've kind of lost interest in the system because I feel like, all right, I understand this system. I'm not learning anything from it anymore, so I'll move on. So I tend to not play anything very long unless it's a very open. Of course, I make everything very open, so I'll just take a game and just rip rules out and stick my own in, which is probably why no one wants to play with me, because nobody knows what rules I'm playing when they show up.
What are we playing today, John?
Yeah. So somebody else jump in before I embarrass myself.
Fair enough. Next up, we've got Mr. Mike Hutchinson. What have you been working on? What have you been playing?
I guess the recent stuff has mostly been playtesting and enjoying Gaslands and Martian Racing Federation, and Billion Suns has hit the table again. Like prior to that, I also really like Saga, although I maybe only played it like 10 or a dozen times or something. My real love after I got back into gaming in a big way before the kids were born was Malifaux. I absolutely adored that. But yeah, I mean, recently I've just been kind of dabbling around playing a bunch of the new things that come out, dabbling a bit in Warhammer and Kill Team and Kingdom Death Monster and stuff. I think like solo stuff that I can enjoy when the kids are in bed. I've done my fatherly duty, and then I can get something out on the table. So I guess that's partly where Perilous Tales came from, but it's also why I play quite a lot of Kingdom Death, but also like Arkham Horror card game, like something that's got all of the density. It just, that one doesn't have the miniatures, although I've pimped it up with all kinds of 3D objects to make it look beautiful. But yeah.
Cool. All right, Joey, what are you working on?
I'm kind of with Joe on this one. I haven't played too much. If I play most things, it's usually playtesting. This is not a test or Reality's Edge. I have played Game of Thrones. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Song of Ice and Fire.
My buddy played. I played that actually twice, and my buddy also, with him and his family, like to play Last Days. So I played that a few times with them. And I did run Rangers, which is, I love any game where you can build something and have fun tinking around. Character design is my favorite part of RPGing. So I love anything where you can tinker. So that, that kind of thing's right up my alley. And that's what I want to do more of. Hopefully when things get back to normal, I want to run like Rangers all the way through, that kind of,
When the world comes back, yeah. I think we don't limit your answers, guys, to like what you're working on right now, but just like where your gaming DNA comes from, I think might be kind of where this question was coming from. So what you've played and how that influences you. Greg, what about you?
I play a lot of Infinity. The guys in our group really like Infinity. I'm a bit of a poly gamer. I'll buy into any game ever. I really like history games because of the depth there. To me, like, truth is stranger than fiction. And when you start diving in, like my dad ordered these minis from a miniature painter, and the only question they asked him was whether or not he wanted Union or Confederate, and he said Union. And he got I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Zouavre or whatever? But he's like, who are these Frenchies? And I was like, Dad. more. A
lot of people live in America back then.
It's just weird stuff. Like there's all kinds of cool, weird stuff. Like growing up here, for some reason, we have like a pretty British perspective on history. Like we like talk, smack on the French. I'm like, the French were like a huge and important part. Anyway, so it's just like, I love unraveling all that stuff and getting into it. But with Infinity right now, we started playing Code 1. And what's great about that is that, speaking of game design decisions, it shows that they have put substantial thought into those things and how it feels when you play Infinity. So now, your desire when you buy into Infinity for the first time is to buy a bunch of heavy infantry and just drop troops and all kinds of crazy stuff. But you have to be more nuanced than that in the core rules. But with Code 1, it's like, no, bring all heavy infantry, dude. There's no punishment for falling off the board with drop troops. It's just so cool, like how it played. So we've been playing that, and it's just, we're laughing and like blowing stuff up. It's really fun.
Unnesting all the special rules, I think, is my favorite part of Code 1, where rules used to be nested underneath a name, and now they're just on the profile. So like if you have mimetism, the stat mod is just like right there, and like just little player friendly things. I think you're right. That game definitely shows a bunch of like really.
That's cool. I hadn't dug into that, but that sounds like it fixes a lot of the things
Oh.
that like I loved so much about Infinity, but on the table, like I just can't process information fast enough to have a good time with it.
Yeah,
And I think that'll probably cross over into the main rules, a lot of that tinkering that they've been doing. But I will say this: if you were like reading the rules for Code 1 at home and you were like, is this just kind of like an oversimplification or those things? Just really encourage you to try it. It's spiritual.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Agreed. Well, that's it. We are out of time, so I think we are going to just kind of try and collate the rest of these questions and weren't for anyone in particular and throw them into the chat or the comment section when this is done. But you want to sign us off, Greg?
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye. Stay safe out there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.